Okay, welcome everyone to the call. I'm Olly, I'm the Chase the Sun founder. It's fantastic to see so many of you taking up this opportunity to pick the brains of one of our collaborators and experts, Toby Leyland, who's an expert kind of coach and for all sorts of endurance sports, running, cycling, etc. This is going to be an hour session today. It's a great opportunity to pick Toby's brains, and he'll introduce the sort of structure of this session in a second. I hope you're all going to find it really useful and you're all excited both to be on this session and all excited to be counting down just 7 weeks to go now until sunrise to sunset, riding across whichever country you've chosen to take on this year to chase the sun across. So Toby, over to you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Toby Leyland. I am the founder and head coach of The Endurance Habit. This is a coaching business helping endurance athletes achieve their goals. I'm also a British cycling road and a mountain bike coach, British cycling educator of new coaches. I work with the GB cycling team on youth development. My passion right now is mountain bike endurance, but I've got a background in Ironman, triathlon, ultra running, road racing, a few other things. Now, tonight's session will hopefully be around about 45 minutes, which will give us around about 15 minutes to answer any questions through the Q&A. You've got the Q&A up the top. You can tap away whenever you like. What I'd like you to all do is to get a pen and paper. I just want you to write down numbers 1, 2, and 3. So hopefully tonight you're going to pick up 3 points. I'm going to go with 3. You might pick up more than 3 points, but there's 3 particular points that will work for you. The aim of tonight's session is to help you in your training journey for Chase the Sun in June. So some of the answers are going to be generic. They will be, you then got to convert that and make that applicable to you. Olly said we've got 7 weeks. I think we've got 1 month, 21 days and 11 hours. So there's no rush. But when you're done, we've now only got 10 hours after that one. I've got around about 90 questions that I'll go through. And as I said, some of these will be generic, so do adapt them to your specific situations. 4 main topics that came up. First one was pacing and event specific. Second big one was nutrition. The third big one was then training. And the last one, which is the old catch-all, is other. So anything that doesn't fit in those first 3 should go into that last one. So I'm going to start with the pacing, and I'm just going to talk about some general concepts of it about sort of pacing. I'm then going to ask Olly to cover some event-specific points, and then we'll move on. So some of the questions, for example, are how fast should I go? Should I use my 100-mile pace for this event? In running, there's a good rule of thumb, which is that as the distance doubles, the pace drops by 5%. So that's how often people estimate their marathon time based on their 10K or their half marathon time. And it's a pretty good approximation in a well-trained individual. On the bike, however, there are far more variations, including elevation, the wind, being able to draft, the bike you've got, so making pace far less predictable. However, if we look at power data, some of you may use power on the bike. Power is just a fixed, that is an output, it's a fixed constant, so it works very well. Majority of people I've worked with who have done 24-hour events, they've pretty much hit around about 60% of their 1 hour power. So if you think the hardest you could go for 1 hour and then work out roughly about 60% of it, that's the pace that you're going to be doing for that 16 hours on Chase the Sun. So that doesn't seem that hard. But obviously the cumulative fatiguing effect, by the end, that 60% will feel quite hard. So let's take a typical rider who's, let's say, got a power threshold of, let's say, 260 watts that they can hold for an hour. They will be looking at somewhere between 150 and 160 watts for that, for example, for a 24-hour event. In this case, a 16-hour event. So again, That is quite doable for the majority of people. For some of you who are using heart rate, we want to use what we call the zone 2. That is your all-day pace. And a good way of thinking about this is, can you talk? Can you have a conversation without having to take an extra breath? If you're having to take an extra breath, you're moving up into that tempo, into that zone 3 area. The talk test, can you just chat away and converse? If you can, bingo, you know you're in your zone 2. That's around about 70 to 85% of your threshold heart rate. Again, what's your heart rate for your maximum 1 hour? However, you may find after about 10 to 15 hours that you will experience a suppressed heart rate. So your heart rate starts to drop, starts to unwind. Before you could get your heart rate up to 120, 130, and now your heart rate's down at 110. You can't get your heart rate up. That is normal. However, what it will require you to do is to manage your intensity, especially on the short, sharp hills. Don't really try and go. You just have to manage your effort. For the Chase the Sun, it is not a race. So you actually have 16 hours to chase the sun. So rather than trying to finish it as quickly as possible, you want to try and maximize the timing. I'm going over to Olly to answer some specific questions about what's in the event guide, because there are some very good questions related to that. Over to you, Olly.
Thanks, Toby. I mean, it leads really nicely on from that last point you made there. So when you receive the event route book, which will be released in a matter of weeks, as soon as I get the cross-check done. So coming within the next 10 days or so will be a route book, which will have page by page mapping of the route and all the various stops on the route and all the various features of the route, including where you've got climbs, descents, etc. In the back of that, the last 2 pages are a comprehensive timing schedule, mile by mile, hour by hour, minute by minute, of where you should be, crucially on what I call a schedule to sunset. So that is the benchmark. That's your plan to maximize your chance of success, and you're spreading your effort across the day. Now, within that schedule to sunset, there is inbuilt a number of stops and a prescribed amount of time at those stops. There's fewer stops in the morning to cater for the fact that you're going to be fresher and you're going to be riding further between breaks. So there'll be a breakfast stop for sort of 20 minutes. And then there'll be a kind of 80 mile-ish. I mean, I'm making these average because it depends slightly on each route, North, South Island, etc. There'll be a kind of 80 to 85 mile stop at a local cafe or something. And then there'll be the lunch stop between 100 to 110 miles, where you've then got a prescribed up to 40 minutes to get your proper lunch into you. And then in the afternoon, the nature of the schedule does change to reflect your inevitable kind of fatigue. And I plan it around my experience from having ridden the Chase the Sun a number of times, is that I find that I need to stop more often, but for shorter in the afternoon. So I tend to break it down into sort of maximum 30-mile segments, if not more, if not an optional stop every between an hour and a half to 2 hours. So there should be an option, because there should be something about every 20 miles, and then you can choose to see how you're feeling. And if you're feeling okay, you skip that stop and you go on to the next one, and then you've bought yourself a bit of extra time in the schedule to spend longer at your next stop. Or you can take those regular breaks of 10 minutes at each of those stops just to refill your bottles, get that extra bit of fuel. Even the one that's sort of soon after lunch is topping up your lunch and your energy levels. I find personally that period just after lunch is the one that I struggle with the most. It's where my energy levels dip between 100 to 130 miles. And the other bit on pacing I was going to say is that that's about timing of stops and length of sort of segments that you're going to be riding. incidentally, if anyone's doing the relay option, then all of the relay stops are prescribed in the map, and the timings for that as well. In terms of pacing, the guidance on the schedule to sunset takes account of topography. So take less so south, because there's only short, sharp hills in the south. They don't tend to go on for very long. But more so in Northern Ireland, there's climbs that could last a number of kilometres. So those miles are taken on the schedule at a slower average pace. And likewise, where you have longer descents in the Northern Ireland, those miles are taken at a higher rate, sort of 18 mile an hour average, rather than your sort of 14, 15. So the schedule to sunset takes account of that. And then obviously once you've got your stops in as well. So really that's your pacing guide. And what it does is it gets you to sunset with about 20 minutes to half an hour in hand for the dreaded, flat tire or last minute mechanical. So that schedule to sunset that you'll see both in the back of the route book, but also marked on the mile markers on the mapping in the route book, is kind of your barometer, if you like. Every time you're ahead of that by, say, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, you're winning. And if you're behind it, all is not lost. It depends why you're behind it. If you're behind it because you've had a couple of mechanicals, then you're probably riding adequately fast enough. You just need to reduce your stops, stop having mishaps, maybe trim your next planned stop a little bit and try and catch up. But it's eminently doable because you have those future stops planned in that you can just truncate to get yourself back on the schedule to sunset.
Okay. Over to you, Ollie.
One person with a hand up there. Do you want to try and take
questions?
Yeah,
I think what we'll do, Anna, if it's okay, is if you just put your question into the Q&A, because we might answer that towards the end. Is that all right? Thanks. Sorry, it's not Anna. I've just looked at the picture. Thanks. Is that okay, Ollie? We'll then go on to the next sort of main sort of topic. So the next big topic with lots of questions is about nutrition. Now, what I will say here is that nutrition is even more individualized than training. So the number one point here is that you have 7 weeks. That is an opportunity for you to practice your nutrition. So don't leave it to the last day. Don't just wing it on the last day. It'll be fine. Practice that nutrition. With a bank holiday weekend, hopefully the sun will still be shining. Opportunity to get out for a few hours. That is also an opportunity for you to test your nutrition strategy. You're going out for 3 hours. Plan what you're going to eat it, see how you feel. Then next time you can now increase it or decrease it or change or modify it. And then again, you test it again. So there's an opportunity here for you to get around about 20 different nutrition strategies and modify and refine it. And for each person here, it will be different. So that's personal.
I'll just re-emphasize that as well, because you're absolutely right. It'll be different for every person. But what's almost universal is that there's 2 main points of failure with people who struggle on Chase the Sun. The first one is nutrition, fueling. Anyone can probably bludgeon their way through a 100-mile sportive without taking that much care of themselves. But if you've done that and you get to 100 miles and you get to try the second half of Chase the Sun, 100 to 200, you have absolutely no chance. You've got to have ridden the first 100 miles really looking after yourself. The mantra I use is eat before hunger, drink before thirst. Eat and drink something every 20 minutes. I set an alarm on my phone or on your Garmin to beep, beep, beep every 20 minutes. Oh, have I drunk half a bottle? Have I had half a bar? Whatever it is works for you. As Toby says, that's specific, but you must be regular and you must do that through the morning to look after yourself. Otherwise, you go into a deficit that's very hard to get out of through the afternoon. The afternoon is going to be hard anyway, but it's only going to be possible if you've looked after yourself in the morning. I'll come on to the second point of failure later.
So on that point there, in ultra distance events or ultra events, and by ultra I mean anything over 8 hours, or 5 hours is ultra typically, around about 60% of your energy will come from carbohydrates, around about 30% will come from fats, and the remaining 10-20% will come from stored glycogen and from breakdown of protein. So even if you are going slowly, your body will prefer to consume carbohydrates. So when people talk about being fat adapted, or they're fasted and they're able just to go for miles and miles on just a banana, their body is a bit like your car. When you go on a long drive in your car, you fill it up. After you've done 400 miles, 500 miles, you've got to stop, you've got to refill it. Doesn't matter how efficient that car is, the car needs fueling. Imagine you're exactly the same. So a simple rule of thumb, and it works pretty well, is aim for 1 gram of carbohydrates per kilo of body weight per hour. So a 70-kilo rider would be aiming for 70 gram of carbs per hour. So that's going to be around about 1,120 grams of carbs. That's quite a lot of carbs. You will burn around about 8,000 calories in the day, which is around about 3 to 4 times your normal daily sort of consumption rate. So you do need to fuel that. So think about what you eat on a normal day and then times that by 4, just to give you an idea of what you're going to be consuming. If you go too hard and you don't fuel, exactly as Ollie said, what will happen is your body's autonomous system will start to shut down those muscles, start to give you the fatigue. And if anybody's experienced that fatigue or the bonk, that effectively is your body shutting down so as to protect any glycogen or any fuel for your brain and the important parts. You can't really hardwire, you can't sort of change that, and you don't want to change that, and you don't want to get yourself into that situation, because once the glycogen has gone out of your muscles, it is very hard, it takes a long time to reprocess it. So, practice. We've talked about this. If you're a 70-kilo rider, for sake of simplicity, go out, do your 3-hour ride. So you're looking at 210 grams of carbs for that 3-hour ride. How does it feel? How does your stomach feel? You can train your stomach to take on board fuel, but you've got to train it. Some people find that they can only do around about 0.5 grams of carbs per kilo per hour. So that would be around about 35 grams. Other riders can stomach 1.5 grams. So could be 100 grams of carbs per hour. So there's quite a range. You've got to figure out what works for you by testing it and trialing it, and keep on modifying it, make it work. So
and definitely what everyone needs to learn to do is to eat whilst you're riding. You've got to eat on the go. You've got to be getting stuff easily out of your pocket, unwrapping it or have it unwrapped, whatever your method is. And this is where Toby's right. You've got 7 weeks now to trial and test what works for you over a long ride, and just eat it as you go. Nibble. You don't want to be only eating when you stop.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So typically, what does that look like? What does 70 grams of carbs look like? So a gel, typically somewhere between 30 and 40 grams of carbs. Your electrolyte drinks, which have got some carbs in there, can be 20 to 30 grams, like a scoop of that. Like a bar, a Vela 40 bar or something, so around about 40 grams. A banana is around about 20 grams, depending on the size. A peanut butter sandwich is around about 30 grams. So the way to operate for a long time is to think of having a wagon wheel of flavor. So think about having some sweet things, think about having some savory things, think about having some sour things, think about having some umami things. Try all these different ideas in order to find out what works for you. So I've had some athletes who, riders, and they've tried things like little mini cheese packs that you can get. They've tried pork pies, sushi, gels, flapjacks. Now, not all at once, not all in the first hour, but that's an example where you've got to go and try the things that work for you. Real food is great. However, it's less portable than some of the modern ones. So if you can find a blend between the two, you are optimizing your fuel strategy. The first hour that you start, for example, you're going to be filled because you're already got your breakfast. So you know what? You probably don't need to eat that much. After, coming up towards a big hill, you've got to be climbing up. Well, that's when you might want to be loading up your nutrition a bit more ahead of that climb. You've got a nice long descent. Great, start eating. Your heart rate will be dropping down. Your body will be able to absorb the food. Question was about the night before. Aim for a good, a good carb-rich, low-fiber meal the day before. So spicy vindaloo with brown rice, probably not the best pre-event meal. You want to just reduce that sort of fiber content 1 or 2 days leading into it. Keep it really simple. Next big one is hydration. How much should you drink? So a good test is, and you could do that this weekend, you could weigh yourself without any clothes on, go for an hour's ride, come back, weigh yourself again. How much body weight have you lost in that 1 hour? That's going to give you roughly what's your sweat loss for an hour. If you've drunk half a kilo of water, add that. If you've been for a week, then add that back on again. So work out what your own personal nutrition hydration loss is. Some people can lose half a kilo for an hour. Some can lose 1.5 kilos per hour. So there's quite a variation within that. But the key thing here is do not drink water alone. Use an electrolyte drink. So you can get these little tubes, which has got a little electrolyte tablet in there. Or you can make your own homemade glucose sodium mix. That's totally fine. Your stomach needs between 200 and 300 mosmols per kilo. So basically is the salinity of what you're putting into your stomach. If you put too much water into your stomach, it's not saline enough. It will not be able to get the carbohydrates through the gut wall. If you have too much concentration, again, you will not be able to get it through the gut wall. So this is where you've got to sort of figure this out a little bit for yourself about your gut and how does it feel. Last one, specific question. Someone was talking about cramping. Cramping sort of often comes from 3 different sources, but one of them people think is an electrolyte imbalance. One solution is there's a product called Cramp Fix by X Miles, and this is like a little little gel. It's a bit like pickle juice. It tastes disgusting, but it does get rid of cramp. It's like a little shot. So you might want to have a couple of those in your back pocket, just in case, and sniff that when you're ready.
I find crisps works as well.
Yeah,
salty crisps.
Salty crisps. You'll start to get that sensation. Oh, I really feel like something salty. So we talked about that wagon wheel. So have those things to hand or at the next aid station. That's probably quite a good guide. Your body tends to know what you need before you even realize it. Is what we've found. Next big topic we're now going to talk about is actually, Olly, over to you about what is at the rest stops in terms of nutrition.
Yeah, and I think this will answer a question that Paul has put on the chat as well. So ultimately, I think whatever your chosen strategy that you might find for a training ride of 50, 80, even 100 miles, it's what you need to do is experiment with various strategies, as Toby said, because over the course of an entire day and the 200 miles, you're going to need a mix. So what we offer in the planned stops and in the route guides is there's a breakfast stop, usually after about 50 miles, which is going to be selling cakes, bacon rolls, obviously hot drinks, etc. So there's an opportunity there to be eating real food. And then at lunchtime, there will be a hot food of either a pasta or a rice or some kind of hot food offer at lunch. That will be, if you're on the Ride Plus package, that's included for you. And so that's free to claim at that point. Or the same offer will be available for anyone to purchase if they're on the Just Ride pack. So you can just pay as you go if you're on the Just Ride. So either way, I mean, everyone has to stop at lunch, mandatory anyway, to log their sort of their presence, etc., so we can help track everyone. But there's a range of hot real food on offer at all of the route lunch stops. So this makes up the mix basically, because you should be expecting to get some decent real food at those key planned stops. And then again in the afternoon, it varies by route, but there's almost always a proper cafe, sandwiches, cakes, etc. So in between, it's for you to be playing around with your own personalized, tailored strategy, whether or not you get on well with gels. I know a lot of people don't, they can only take gels so far. Or for me personally, it's kind of homemade flapjacks or something, which I wrap them in tinfoil or something that's really easy to just unpeel. There's no like pulling open a packet or anything. So homemade flapjacks, which see me through most of the intermediate riding phases, and the odd banana and stuff, something with a bit of variety. And then I'll have a packet of like jelly babies or something really sugary for those really tough moments in the afternoon where you just need a real sugar hit. But other than that, you really take advantage of the planned real food stops and really tuck into those. Part of the ethos of this ride is about engaging the riders with the local communities that you're moving through. So the lunch stops are planned at either a community hall or a restaurant, or so those people are going out of their way with our support to help support you as riders on your endeavors. So even where there's a little bit of inevitably there's a queue if you arrive in the middle of the bell curve when everyone else is there, but please do try and support our partners. And that goes for the breakfast and the afternoon cafe stops where, you haven't pre-purchased the food as part of your registration there, because we don't know exactly when and where everyone wants to stop. So that is up to you to pay as you go. But, please do consider the community benefit as you're moving through these areas, and you're investing in the local businesses and the people, as well as meeting the local people. I mean, everyone that we work with are lovely people, and they're just doing their best to try and support you and everyone else around you on your adventures. So yeah, please try and frequent them and as best you can. There are obviously just chain supermarkets marked along the route, petrol stations, etc., where you can just buy a Lucozade and an off-the-shelf pack of crisps, etc., as and where you need. So again, all the information is in the route book, but that's the thinking behind it.
Thanks, Ollie. Really good. So next main topic we'll talk about is training. I will try and avoid using the word "it depends," but it does depend. However, it does depend on age, it does depend on experience, it does depend on any medical issues, if you're coming back from injury. A rider who has done Chase the Sun before or done something similar will have the benefit of being informed. A rider who has not done it before has the beauty of discovery. So on the one hand, it's great that you know what you're doing. On the other hand, there is an element of innocence which is to be cherished, in my view. So first question that often come up: do I have to ride 200 miles before the event? No. However, if you can get around about 8 hours in the saddle, that is going to give you the majority of the psychological and the technical benefits without absolutely destroying you. It is not, those long rides are not just about building up the aerobic capacity in your legs and your lungs, but it's also about building up the strength in your wrists, in your shoulders, in your neck, in your knees, in your toes, in your bum. All of those other areas are the things that are going to be really sore, not just your legs. There is no.
I definitely go with that. It's about finding your comfort, if that's not too ambitious a word, but you're melding your body to the tool that is your bicycle for distances over 100 miles. And so getting those two things in sync and used to each other is something that, again, it's similar to the food thing. It's like you can pretty much bludgeon your way through on a bike that's not set up for you perfectly through to 100 miles, but go beyond that and spend the entire day riding, and you will really start to notice the little aches and pains and the bits where your weight's not quite in the right position and things like that. So experiment with that beforehand, get yourself conditioned, and that is the comfort of riding on the bike, which comes back to the mental thing, because the discomfort can affect your mentality, which affects more than your physical preparation in terms of your ability to complete the event. So it really is, in the afternoon, it's all in your head. It's amazing what your body can do physically, but your mental side can easily crumble, and that's to do with, again, food or motivation or comfort can really bring you down.
I think there's if you excuse my French, so I might have to edit this in terms of swearing, but there's a guy called Nims Purger who's climbed 13 of the highest peaks around the world. So he's a Sherpa. And you've got to be pretty extraordinary to do something like that. And he says, when you think you're fucked, in fact, you're only 50% fucked. So what his point was is that when you think you're on your last legs, there is so much more that your mental, that your psychological side can give you. So we'll talk a bit about this at the end as well. Some people ask, if I look through the training plan, what is the most important session? So what is the golden session? What's the silver bullet? There is no magic formula, I'm afraid, except for one thing, and that is consistency. So regular training, week in, week out, that will develop the aerobic capacity and the physical muscular endurance to cope with the demands of the event. So that consistency is, if you're doing week in, week out, week in, week out, you will find that you'll start to develop that amazing base and that amazing capacity to carry on riding for further and further and further. One day your furthest ride is 50 miles. Next time it's 60 miles. Next time it's 70. Next time it's 80. And you gradually find suddenly you're riding 100 miles. You've now doubled the distance that you thought was possible 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. But that only comes with consistency. Aim to spend around about 80% of your time in zone 2. We talked a bit about the zone 2. So this is the talk test. Can I talk without having to take an extra breath? Include some hard sessions. Don't shy away from them. That VO2, so the ones above your threshold, or that sustained power where you're having to hold a comfortably uncomfortable effort for 8, 10, 20 minutes, then have a recovery, go again. They're very powerful sessions. The more that you can raise your threshold up, and we talked about at the beginning, you're looking at around about 60% of your threshold. If your threshold is really high, well, 60% of that is a higher number. So you'll then be feeling very comfortable on there. Do include off the bike work. I'm a great fan of things like yoga, Pilates, strength training, particularly if you're not very flexible. And as the training builds up, what you want to try and do is you want to manage your load, manage your muscles so that you're able to recover, so you're able to go out and do another session again the next day. The more that you can get in, and it doesn't have to be full on and thing, it can just be 10 minutes. Just do 10 minutes. Do 10 minutes every day. And suddenly before you know it, you've done an hour in the week. Call it stretching, call it man flow yoga, call it whatever you want to call it dynamic heat body pump. Something that's off the bike will help you, because if you think on the bike, you are very much in a single plane, so you want to be making sure you're working the lateral plane from there.
Yeah, I definitely second that. For me, it's yoga. It's a form, it's not a kind of hippy dippy yoga, but it's quite a physical stretching led yoga. And it comes back to that comfort point I was making earlier, is that you need to get yourself in sync with being comfort on the bike. But actually achieving that is not necessarily achieved on the bike. It's getting the bike set up so you're not creating those pains, and any stresses and strains that you are finding when you get off the bike after a 60, 80, 100-mile ride. It's what you do off the bike that then relieves those muscles, resets your body and your frame to allow you to get back on and go again in greater comfort next time. So the off the bike training definitely helps you on the bike to achieve that comfort.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. For those who are running, some specific questions about running. Carry on running. It's a really, think of yourself as an all-round athlete, and that, chase the sun is a day. But if you want to look at yourself as an all-round athlete, carry on running. However, you might want to just sort of knock back some of the intensity or knock back some of the duration. And you probably don't want to be doing an ultra marathon the week before. But, if you're fit enough and you feel like it, go ahead. If you've got spare time, you've got more time than is prescribed in the training plan, then increase your zone 2, increase that volume. So if you've got an extra hour, an extra 2 hours, just do some more of that 70 to 80% threshold heart rate, 50 to 75% of your threshold power. That will really work. Do work on some of those, talk about the sustained climbs, so that sort of 8 to 20 minute efforts, so really good efforts, but you could do 2 or 3 of those efforts and feel good. That will really help you. If you've got a gravel bike or you've got a mountain bike, go on those bikes. The advantage of that, particularly mountain biking and off-road, it's far more stochastic, so it's short, sharp power. So that's going to help. You're just looking to mix up the training load. It will also help with saddle sores. If you only use one bike and you use it for your turbo and you use it for your commute and you use it for your riding, there is a danger that you're only having one point of contact. So having multiple different bikes, so I thoroughly recommend buying another bike, is that will help with saddle sores. You're not restricted just to being on that one saddle. A question I had here was about older riders. Age is just a number. So I was watching a couple of days ago the over 80s doing their 100-meter world record attempts, and they're over 80 and they go way quicker than I could. I think it's 13 seconds 49. So that's pretty impressive. So age is just a number. If you're riding in a group and you're a good group, make the training interesting. Think of it as a journey, not a destination. So go and plan a nice ride down to down to Isle of Wight if you're in the south. Go and plan a nice ride to an interesting area. Make it fun. However, if you're with a group, do recognise there are some days that you will feel strong, and there'll be some days where you will feel weak. And as Geraint Thomas put it quite well, sometimes you're the hammer and sometimes you're the nail. You won't always be the hammer. That's right. On to mental preparation. One thing I particularly work with some of the athletes, often I ask them the question is, why are you doing this? What is your why? Each and every individual will have a different reason why they're doing this event. Think about it, write it down, come up with an answer. If you haven't got an answer, by the end of the ride, you should have figured it out. If not, you have to come back next year and figure it out again. resilience. When things go wrong. So things are going to go wrong. So let's just put that out there. It will not be smooth. It will not be plain sailing. It will not be bed of roses. So the way to deal with this is first thing is to accept it. Accept that you've got a problem. Second step, okay, diagnose the problem. What exactly is it? What's the real problem here? Third thing is then come up with an action plan. How am I going to solve this issue? And the fourth step is then implement it. The hardest step for many people is accepting that there is a problem. But once you accept it, then the rest starts to follow. Do not think that don't go and think, oh, nothing will go wrong, it'll be fine. Plan, and for some people they find it quite helpful, is you write down again the 3 things you're most worried about. What are the 3 things you're really worried about? Write them down and create an action plan now, how you're going to deal with that problem. If you can do that now, 7 weeks before your event, when you're nice and calm and relaxed, totally fine. So when that occurs, it's okay. I've got a solution to this problem. I've already figured it out. Now, sod's law is that something else will turn up, but the process is still the same. Okay, and then a little mantra, and Olly's mentioned one. HHH, it's a really simple one, which is head, heart, hydration. Head, are you thinking clearly? Are you daydreaming? Are you drifting off? Or are you focused and in the zone? Sometimes when you're drifting off a bit, it can be that you just need a bit more. Your brain will consume the most amount of carbohydrates than any other part of your body. So you need to fuel that. Olly talked about jelly babies. Sometimes you might just need quite a also dextrose tablets or something, a little sugar hit just to get the brain working because you're a bit fuzzy. Heart. What is your heart rate doing? Have limits as to where your heart rate is if you use heart as a guidance. Do you feel completely out of breath? Are you able to talk? Think about that. And the last one is hydration. You've done your sweat test. You've gone away. You know how much you need to be sort of consuming. You haven't been for a wee for 6 hours. Might suggest that you might need to have another drink. So just think about that hydration. Head, heart, hydration. Those 3, you've got those 3, the rest tends to follow. Right. Olly, I was now going to move on to, I've got 7 last little points on others, unless there's anything else you want me to say on training.
I was just going to say one point in terms of you've given all of the strategy and the theory. I can just offer what I do personally, and I think it's great when you're training. In answer to the question, do I need to ride 200 miles beforehand? And the answer is no. When you're training, it's great to go further than 100 miles because psychologically that's good. I think that pushes you 100 miles and beyond, pushes you into that beyond the regular sportive, and you've really got to be seen to be looking after yourself. So that's the core, going back to what we were saying earlier, that's the core skill that you need to succeed at Chase the Sun. So if you can either finish a 100-mile ride feeling like you can go another hour or 2, or actually go another hour or 2 and do a 120, 130-mile ride, for me, that's as far as I've ever ridden in preparation for Chase the Sun. I don't see any need to go any further. It's just time that you're taking away from whatever else is in your life if you're trying to ride further than that multiple times in preparation. So
Can I just add on to that, Olly? The other thing you have to bear in mind is if you do a really long ride, let's say you do a 13-hour ride, there is an increased cost of recovery. So fitness is training plus recovery. If you load up too much training, then you're going to need to take quite a large amount of rest and recovery in order to get the fitness, in order to allow your body to adapt. So do think about that in terms of how much you want to extend that long ride. And for each individual, it will be different. You'll feel comfortable as to what your comfort zone is. But as Ollie said, over 100 miles is always good because you've broken the back of that psychological barrier. Right, some other questions. Kit, now's the time to go shopping. Go and get your new bib shorts, your shoes, your gloves, other bits and pieces. Do that now, not 2 weeks before the event. You want all your kit to feel worn, used. You've got rid of all the niggles for it. Next thing, go and book your bike in for a service. Unless you're a good qualified mechanic, every bike could do with a bit of a service. So book that in now, because bike shops are usually booked out weeks in advance. Buy some new tyres about three weeks out. A nice set of nice new tyres, new inner tubes, will just give you that comfort factor that your bike is going to be running and you're not going to get the dreaded P. You probably still will get the puncture. However, you don't want to be starting a long journey on old worn tyres. I had a specific question from an athlete in Holland who was talking about replicating hills in flat locations. Find a headwind, that replicates it. Or number 2, drop the cadence on your bike, so reduce your revolutions per minute down to around sort of 60, 70 RPM, and feel that tension on the pedal all the way around. And it'll feel quite heavy. That works and replicates the same effect as going up a hill. The only thing you can't do, it's tricky to do, is to get then up and out of the saddle and moving the bike around when you're on the flats. But that should do majority of the similar effort. Time crunched. A lot of you are time crunched. You're not all professional cyclists. You don't have hours and hours and hours. So even a 20-minute session, you've only got half hour, a 20-minute session is an effective session. It will have a positive impact. We talked about that earlier on, that consistency. Just getting in an extra 20-minute session, just that 10 minutes of yoga, you do that every day or you do it 5 days a week, it will have an impact. If you don't have time to do that long ride, you can't do a 5-hour ride this weekend because you're busy, but you could do a 2-hour ride in the morning and an hour ride in the evening, well then split it up. Do a session in the morning, do a session in the evening. That's totally fine. What you're trying to do is, and with the longer rides, that's the opportunity to test the nutrition that we talked about earlier on. If you're only out for an hour, it's tricky to test the nutrition. It was tricky for you to see what the effects of the nutrition are, or whether you've taken enough. So that's typically where those long rides come from. Right, I said we're going to be on an hour. It's now 10:02. That's me done. If you've got any specific questions that I have not answered or Ollie and I have not covered, fire them into the Q&A or fire them into the chat and we will do this right away. We will answer your questions live, he says. To Ian Udell, yes, you can definitely get a prescription for a second bike. The general rule of thumb is N+1 or D-1. As many bikes as you can have.
Rule 12 N+1.
That answers that one. Thanks. Someone put some things about dynamic stretching on you, but there's lots of good content on YouTube. Really good for some of the stretching. I've got a lot of, for the gentlemen, a lot of guys like Manflow Yoga, which is less sequencing and more about hold a position and you hold it for 10 breaths, which is roughly 45 seconds. Colin's question, which was, Carb drinks are a good idea, yes. A good one is Scratch, SKRATCH, Scratch Labs. It used to be called the Secret Formula. It's quite organic and good for the stomach. And it's low carbs. It's around about 20 to 30 grams of carbs per scoop, but it's got all the electrolytes in. And lemon and lime is my favorite. So, but that's a personal choice. But a lot of athletes I work with over the years have used that, which is good.
I'll jump in and cover what's covered in the briefing on Friday. There's three main parts to the briefing on Friday. One is just to welcome you to the event and for you to meet all of your other riders, and just generally swap notes and just capture the vibe. I think that's an important part of the event weekend. You do need to register and pick up your rider number, etc., and various other things. I won't go through them all now, but bits and pieces, and the all important orange ribbon that identifies you and of course everyone else that you're riding with on the Chase the Sun. So that is distributed on the Friday evening. It's also distributed on Saturday on sunrise, but you can imagine if everyone waits till then, you're all going to be in a big queue. So Friday evening is that. In terms of the content of the Friday evening briefing, it will repeat information that's been sent out by email in advance, key information. It won't necessarily add anything new unless there's been a very last minute incident or roadworks or something that we've become aware of that we can flag up. Otherwise, it's an opportunity, a bit like today, to final questions and answers. A question you've got might well be one that 100 other people in the room are thinking about too. So that's the concept of the Friday briefing, to a group get together to share information and ask final questions.
Good. So let me go through this. Someone's picked up an injury on the shoulder. I know what that feels like. I bust my shoulder 2 months ago. What you're going to have to do is get to know a really good physio. I recommend a good physio who's just going to help you on that rehab process, get you back into action. If you've got an indoor turbo, you can be static. That works pretty well. Get back out on the bike. You're just going to have to manage, depending on your injuries, as to what you can do. So just work your way forwards. Don't go back from that side. People talking about combining carbs with isotonic drinks. Yes, I tend to find that works very well for a lot of athletes. They'll take some carbohydrate food, so gels and bars and other stuff, as well as having the isotonic drink. The combination of the two enables them to get that 60, 70, 80 grams of carbs in per hour, which works pretty well. Recovery foods and drinks, clean eating, keep it simple. Lots of veggies, lots of good green foods, pretty good. Chocolate milk is actually one of the sort of works really well. It's got a good mix of carbs and protein in there. What else do we have?
The training schedule, timing.
So the training schedule. Where was that one? Someone said they couldn't do the long ride on the 24th. Then find the time that works for you. The training guide is a guide. It's a you stick on the fridge and off you go. The more detailed plan that's in Training Peaks allows you to move things around to enable what you can do. Coaching allows you then to say to coach, I can't do it this weekend, but I can do next weekend. I can't do it Thursday, but I can do it Friday. Make it work for your routine. Don't get up 2 hours earlier to do something. Make sure you include your sleep. Sleep is really important. I cannot overemphasize the importance of sleep.
Answer one here, Toby, on what's the average pace used in the timing schedule for the route guides.
Yep.
So it takes account of stops, and it suggests an average flat section of the route pace at 15 miles an hour. So that's not over ambitious, but it is something you need to maintain over many, many miles, and that's a lot harder to maintain that in the latter half of the ride. What I encourage people to do to feel really confident, really well prepared, is if you can be riding in a group ride and averaging upper 15s towards 16 miles an hour. What that will mean is that when you are riding in a group and you're feeling fresh, and your morning should feel a bit like your training rides, and that first 100 miles you might be covering when you're pedaling at more like 16 mile an hour average. So actually you'll be banking incrementally time, which means you turn up to the lunch stop half an hour early, and then you leave the lunch stop after the prescribed sort of 40 minutes or however long the rest and the food takes, and you bank that half an hour, which you're then going to slowly sort of utilize to pay back over the afternoon, when actually you might be riding more sort of 14 and a half, 15 because of fatigue. So effectively the schedule to sunset, you should use it as a barometer, but your morning is your opportunity to kind of just start to try and get ahead of it, and then in the afternoon you should just be keeping up with it, trying to hold whatever advantage you've got in the bank, if you like. But
a quick point on that, Ollie. It's also very useful if you ride in groups or riding with people, if somebody's stronger than you, let them sit on the front, sit behind them. You will save 20 to 30% of energy just by sitting behind them. You're going the same speed, but make use of those strong, fit riders. Do encourage them and say how strong and fit they are, and that they'd be better sitting on the front than and you sit behind them to say how strong they are.
But crucially, don't pick a group that's too fast for you.
Yeah, no,
ideally it's a stronger rider, but who is just prepared to take the win, but also ride at your pace so you can keep up with it. And if you are trying to keep up with someone, there's a lot of people on Chase Sun Ride. Better to let them go and find someone else who's just that little bit more manageable for you. The next person back. Otherwise, if you try and keep up with someone and you burn your matches through the morning, it's very difficult for the rest of the day.
It'll come back to bite you. Leslie, excellent, brilliant your riding, and recommended Pilates. This will do a transcript, will be available for this. We'll get this sent out. Nathan, you asked about sleep. Look at sleep across the week. How many hours of sleep do you get per week? Don't think about the one day itself. You'll sleep for ever the next couple of days. So don't worry about that. But do look at how much sleep you're getting each week, and if you can get an extra half hour, an extra hour each week, that will have a positive effect over time.
Toby's question here: I'm riding on my own. Will people generally group up on a day? Absolutely. Yeah, no one rides Chase the Sun alone, really. It's a non-competitive event. It's very sociable, very friendly, very supportive. You will probably find that you'll ride with a number of groups over the day, because people will come together on the sections where you're riding, because you'll find someone who matches your pace, and then you might stop for a different length of time at the stops, and then you'll find some new group that you ride with on the next segment, and then over the afternoon you'll start to recognize people, but you won't necessarily be fully in sync with them. I should probably mention the second point of failure, which is related to that. So it's fueling for people, which we've covered. And the second point of failure is not about physical or mental preparation. It's just about discipline and stopping for too long. It's amazing what a 10-minute stop can just go like that. So you've got to be thinking about it 10, 20 minutes before you stop. Do I need the toilet? Do I need my bottles filled? Do I need to buy food here, or just ride, eat some food that's in my pockets? Or do I need to find my support car? If you have one, it's absolutely not necessary. Everything is, there's more than enough facilities on all of these routes, if you know where they are and you follow the route guide. But think about what you're doing. Talk to the people around you if you're with them. So, and all go to the toilet at the same time. Don't take it to, oh, sorry, I need to go. It's like, well, we're all ready now. You should have gone. That can put everyone's schedule behind. Queue up with one person, buy everyone's food. Don't pay for it. Yeah, there's a question here about food as well, and queues. Well, honestly, we do as much as we can with our venues to prepare them and our staff on the day to help manage any queues. But ultimately, if you do turn up in the middle of that bell curve, or there's a momentary thing where they need to refill some pasta or something, then a queue can build up. But you can help manage that by basically one person decide what everyone wants and go in and make one transaction and pay for one bunch of food. It just saves on the payment and the queuing and everything. And the others can be going to the toilet, filling bottles for everyone. So give each one in your group of like 4 or 5 riders, even if you haven't met them before, even if you've just made friends on the ride, everyone has a role at the stops and go and do that. Obviously, you can't go to the toilet for someone else, but you can fill their bottles, you can buy them a flapjack, etc.
Just on that point that Ollie just made there, if you think you stop for 10 minutes, if in 10 minutes, instead of stopping, you are still moving forward, or you reduce your stopping time, that's suddenly the 3 miles have gone in that 10 minutes. So
yeah,
cumulatively, the combination of all those extra stops will tot up. Do stop, enjoy the stop, but just be efficient with your time.
Definitely.
Don't faff. Avoid the faffers.
Yeah, because if you've stopped for a 10-minute stop and you've taken 20 minutes there, that's 2.5 miles per hour that you then need to make up in the next hour or spread across the next 3 hours. So that's an extra mile an hour faster you have to ride for the next 3 hours to make up for that 10 or 12 minutes that you did at that stop. And that is what people really don't realize. And that is where the majority of the failures happen, is people stopping for too long. And either that means they turn up late, or it means that they then stress themselves trying to catch up, and then they burn through too much calories, and then they end up burning themselves out and not completing the course, because they end up having to drop out. So discipline on stopping is
question for Kathy. Are bikes safe unlocked on stops? Again, use your common sense. If it's just a whole bunch of riders, I'm sure you're going to be fine. But if you've got a brand new Pinarello Dogma and you're on in a busy city centre, I probably wouldn't leave it there and go into a shop unguarded. But again, just use your common sense, I suggest. It was the 3 P's, I think I was going to talk about, Dirk, which was power, pacing, and sort of performance. I've sort of covered those already, so I haven't had another mantra. I'm just going to keep it very simple. Just have the H's: head, heart, hydration. Those 3 sort of covers it.
Bag drop size, bit of tolerance, but just don't take the mick. Don't come with a camping rucksack when our vans are only big enough. If everyone did that, you would have to leave someone's bag by the side of the road. Are lights needed at the beginning? Yes, definitely, and definitely possibly at the finish if you haven't made it. So everyone should be bringing lights charged up, ready to go.
Right. Thank you very much indeed for all your questions, and hopefully we've answered the majority of them. A lot of the advice we've given you is general advice. Do work on it and play it down to what works for you. And do go out there and enjoy the journey. Enjoy this training opportunity, this training time. The weather's good. It's a great route. All the different routes are fantastic. And it's a fantastic challenge, something to be working towards. So I heartily commend you all for undertaking this challenge. Maybe next year I'm going to have to sort of sign up myself and give it a go. Get off the mountain biking on the road. But thank you very much indeed. No more from me. Ollie, you happy?
Yes, just to say, a couple of you have asked, this session has been recorded. We'll look at it and edit it as best we can, and then we will make it available in some form over the next few weeks. And finally, to Dirk, I'm afraid I don't make my own flapjacks, so I can't give you the recipe. I don't know.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, guys, and guys and girls, and have a fantastic weekend, and look forward to being in contact.